Hello there, and welcome to a Dragon Soul Raid Guide. I'm Bubba Sparks, and we're currently on Morchok, the first boss in the Dragon Soul Raid. Morchok acts like somewhat of a gatekeeper, and he is an extremely easy encounter. And in the Dungeon Journal it says that Morchok is the most powerful elemental still under Deathwing's sway, which is pretty pathetic if I say so myself. Morchok is a two-phase encounter consisting of the Crystal Phase and the Black Blood Phase. Now, the Crystal Phase lasts approximately 1 minute and is a tank and spank, during which the raid is faced with two tasks other than attacking the boss. The tanks need to regularly taunt the boss off of each other, and a few players will have to soak the proximity damage done by the crystals that the boss summons. Now, the boss will summon crystals randomly around the proximity which you are tanking him in. And while this is going on, you will need to get a few of your raid members, preferably ranged, to go and stand within the range of the crystals. And after they stand in the range, after about 15 to 20 seconds, I believe it will explode, dealing damage to those players that are standing within a certain range of it, and knocking them into the air. And the Black Blood Phase, which lasts approximately 30 seconds, requires your raid to hide behind pillars of stone created during the encounter to avoid being hit by the black blood flowing out of Morchok. Now, while you're standing behind those the pillars of stone, you can find points that you can still DPS out of if you're ranged and not be out of line of sight. Now, and at 20%, Morchok gains the Furious buff, and what the Furious buff does is increases his attack speed by 30% and his damage inflicted by 20%. Now on to Morchok's abilities. During the Crystal Phase, Morchok will use the following abilities. The first one will be Crush Armor, which it does exactly as it sounds like it would. It is a stacking debuff applied by Morchok on his tank every 6 seconds. It stacks up to 10 times, and each stack reduces armor by 10%, eventually forcing a tank swap. The next ability Morchok will use is Stomp, which is an AoE attack that he casts every 10 to 15 seconds. It deals 750,000 physical damage in 10-man difficulty, 1,625,000 damage in looking for raid difficulty, though the tooltip says differently at the moment, and 2,500,000 damage in 25-man difficulty. The damage is evenly split between players within 25 yards of Morchok, though the two closest players take double a share of damage, and generally you want those two closest players to be the two tanks. And the next ability he casts is called Resonating Crystal, which is cast every 15 seconds approximately, and this ability summons a red crystal that explodes after 12 seconds, dealing split damage to the three closest players in looking for raid and 10-man difficulties, and the 7 closest players in 25-man difficulty. The total damage dealt by the explosion decreases when the players are close to the crystal, between 25,000 and 30,000 damage each if all players are standing close to the crystal when it explodes. And generally, what you want to do is have ranged go near them, so they can still DPS the boss, like, because if you had melee standing there, a lot of the time they would be out of the boss's hitbox. In addition, Morchok performs a melee attack on his current target every 2.5 seconds, and that hits for approximately 30,000 damage in 10-man difficulty, 60,000 in looking for raid difficulty, and a bit more in 25-man difficulty. I couldn't find the actual number for 25-man. And the damage of the melee attacks obviously increases with the more stacks of Crush Armor that the tank has. So the strategy for properly handling the Crystal Phase revolves around 3 simple tasks. which are proper positionings for dealing with Stomp, Tank Swap for dealing with Crush Armor, and have targeted players soak the damage from the resonating crystals. Other than that, this phase should be dedicated to doing as much damage as possible to Morchok. In the positioning of this fight, you would want to have him positioned about right where you aggro him from, about the middle of that little area that he's in. And because of Stomp, the Rage should be positioned within 25 yards of the boss. Other than that, there are really no other positioning constraints, though stacking together close to the boss will make AoE healing more efficient. And the only players that have to move out of the 25-yard radius are those that will have been targeted by the resonating crystal. And the tank swap for this, because of Crush Armor, the tanks will need to regularly taunt the boss off of each other. The debuff lasts 20 seconds and stacks every 6 seconds, which means that the taunt should occur as soon as a 4th stack is applied on the current tank. The resonating crystal, which, like I said previously, is cast every 15 seconds, which is it's 3 times each crystal phase. Morchok will summon a new crystal. The closest player, 3 and 25 man difficulty, and 3 and 10 man difficulty, and 7 and 25 and looking for raid difficulties, will be easily identified by the beam of light that links them to the crystal. The beam changes color depending on the distance between the player and the crystal. Red and yellow when the player is far from the crystal, and blue when the player is close. After 12 seconds, the crystal will explode, knocking back the target players, provided they have done their job and moved close to the crystal and dealing damage to them. Even though the beams initially target the closest players, and it is possible to replace someone by simply moving closer to the crystal than they are, it enables more aware players to compensate for other players' lack of reaction. To deal with resonating crystal, you can either have the closest players move to the crystal when it spawns, or have a set of designated players that will handle every crystal that spawns. Alright, now on to the Black Blood phase. Shortly after the explosion of the 3rd resonating crystal, Morchok enters the Black Blood phase, during which he casts 3 abilities in quick succession before resuming the crystal phase. Players will be pulled to Morchok before having to rapidly cover to avoid a very damaging ability. During the Black Blood phase, Morchok casts 3 abilities in the following order: Earthen Vortex, Falling Fragments, and Black Blood of the Earth. Now what Earthen Vortex does is marks the beginning of the Black Blood phase. All players are pulled towards Morchok and begin to take physical damage equivalent to 5% of their health every second for 5 seconds. So after that 5 seconds is up, 25% of everyone's health will be down, which is easily healed through. After that, Morchok casts Falling Fragments, which is cast immediately after all players have been pulled towards Morchok. This ability is channeled for 5 seconds and creates stone pillars around Morchok. Standing next to the location where a pillar is created, deals 15,000 physical damage in 10 man and 25 man difficulties, and 9,750 damage in the looking for raid. You will notice that players hardly ever take damage from being too close to a pillar, though. And you will have to use these pillars to not take damage from the next ability, which is called Black Blood of the Earth, which is cast immediately after the channel of Falling Fragments. And it is finished. For 24 seconds, Black Blood will flow outwards from Morchok. Players standing in it will receive a stacking debuff that disappears as soon as they step out of the blood. The debuff stacks every second, and each stack inflicts 5,000 nature damage per second, and around 3,250 in looking for raid difficulty. And after this, the phases just alternate, and it's tank and spank. Well, thank you guys for watching. I hope this guide has been beneficial, and until next time.